So really having a lot of money in the bank doesn't make too much sense. I'd much rather be asset rich, cash poor. I had a question that someone said, you claim you have a net worth of $200 million, but you don't seem like you live a life of someone that has a net worth of $200 million. Yeah. And that's a very interesting question.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Because I don't think people understand what net worth really truly means. Yeah. So I'm going to explain, let me put this shit on Do Not Disturb. I'm going to explain to people what net worth truly means and how we came to that figure. It's very simple. Number one, we have a business that does $25 million a year in sales, and that business would trade for a multiple of 5 if we put it up for sale currently even. Okay, so that's $100 million
conservatively.
What?
Conservatively,
yeah. It truly could trade for anywhere, maybe even. I can't see a 10.
A 10 multiplier would be hard, but a 7, 8, like for a special buyer, is possible.
Exactly. So somebody with a special interest would probably overpay because they could leverage our whatever we've built, infrastructure, IP, stuff like that. They might find that extra value, which we do have a lot of IP, to be honest. But it's very simple. Routinely, companies in our industry, in the nutraceutical and sports nutrition industry, sells for a multiple of 5 of revenue. A multiple of 5 revenue would get us somewhere in between $100 to $125 million sale price. Okay, very simple.
And you own 100% of it.
And I own 100% of it. And for the real estate portion of things, I own upwards of around $100 million of real estate. It's very simple.
Yeah.
And that's it. Done. $200 million.
Yeah.
So it's very simple. However,
now the optics of it.
Here's the reality of it. The business makes, millions of dollars in profit a year, but we roll it back into the business in order to scale it. And that's why it's been able to scale so fast. Yeah. I don't take anything. I really only take, I think... in
the grand scheme of things, a negligible amount.
Yeah.
It's, like you said before, it's the money from the real estate that has essentially given you even the things that you have right now.
Exactly. And it's the... and really, to further go into my income... I claim only, I think it's around, I don't even know what I claim, to be quite honest. I don't remember. But it's a little bit of a sliding scale. Every time the business makes X amount of dollars, a little bit more, they might add like 10 grand. But I don't actually take all of it. I take a very small portion. I think at this point it's around like maybe $45,000 a year. And the rest I keep in the company. I don't need it. I'd rather, even though it's a small amount in the grander scheme of things, I'd rather keep it there to use it in order to scale, even though it's a smaller amount. Any bit can help. In terms of the real estate, the bulk of the cars in the beginning, or really the first car, and then a few of the cars after that, original white Lamborghini, it was from the sale of some condos of my first purchase back in 2007, 2008 time period. I sold, I think, 7 condos, and I sold them for around maybe 8 times more than I paid for them. Some of them I was buying for 10, 30, 40, maybe not 10, maybe 10 or 8 to 10 is a stretch, but like anywhere from like 5 to 10 times. Some of them I actually bought for like in the 20s, in the 20,000s, and I ended up selling for like around almost 200,000. So that's where the cars came from initially, and then after that I just started trading cars. But that's where the net worth is. That's where
you should reply to that guy and say, what do you think a person with this net worth should look like? Because he's like, you don't look like someone that is worth that amount.
Exactly. The problem that
I wonder what in his mind he would envision.
Well, here's the problem. People have the idea that when you say you have a $200 million net worth, that you have $200 million in the bank.
Right.
That's not the case. Moving into the next part of the video is the fact that I'm asset rich and fairly cash poor. The reason why I would choose to be cash poor, or anybody really should choose to be cash poor, is because having cash in the bank is a liability at this point. You're actually losing money on the cash, on your asset, your cash asset in the bank, because inflation is moving faster than the income that you're making on the cash sitting in the bank that the bank is paying you on interest or paying you by interest. So it really doesn't make any sense to be cash rich. The only time it really makes sense to be cash rich is in certain circumstances. I hold a certain amount of cash in the operating bank account for Canadian Protein. The reason I do that is when there's an opportunity for, say, for an opportunistic nutritional purchase, like, you know, one of our vendors might come to me and say, hey, I've got this opportunity to buy, you know, a cheap truckload of pea protein or whatever. This literally recently just happened.
Yeah.
Remember how we were running out of pea protein? We didn't have any. Literally, one of our vendors came up. This wasn't necessarily an opportunistic buy, because if we didn't have this happen, we would have been out of stock. So it was perfect timing. However, the opportunity came. The reason why this was an opportunistic buy was because he offered it at a discount because he needed to offload it. We had a bunch of cash in the bank, pulled the trigger on it. Now we're going to, you know, that money goes way further. So there is a point in time when it does make sense to be, you know, or to have cash sitting there. If, you know, they use the term white powder, if there's, you know, an opportunistic play, right? But for the most part, I really don't like to have cash sitting in the bank. I would much rather put it in some sort of asset, even pay higher interest on that asset to maintain its liquidity. And when I say liquidity, I'll give you an example. I would much rather buy an asset, keep it in an open mortgage or a bridge loan or something, so that if another opportunity came up and I parked my cash into that asset, I could refi out that one asset, pull my equity out, go into the next one, right? So really having a lot of money in the bank doesn't make too much sense. I'd much rather be asset rich, cash poor.